everyone. Welcome to Be Our Guest, our weekly virtual happy hour with industry professionals. I'm Dev Janki. I am the artistic director of Live and in Color. We are a not-for-profit theater company based both in New York and Connecticut. Our mission is to develop new plays and musicals that promote and celebrate diversity. While in-person programming is on pause, we are very excited to be offering more virtual programming like this interview series. Be sure to check out our website, theaterincolor.org, where you can find out a lot more about us. And be sure to check in frequently because we have a lot of exciting new virtual programming coming up the end of this month and into next month. So look out for that. Now, grab your cocktail and get ready for a very special episode of Be Our Guest dedicated to Broadway Stage Managers. Please start leaving your questions in the comments for our guests. And now, without further ado, please welcome stage manager from such shows as the Scottsboro Boys and Wicked. It's Alex Volckhausen. Hi, Alex. Welcome.
Hello.
And next up, stage manager of 27 Broadway shows, including Hadestown and In the Heights, amongst others, Beverly Jenkins. Hello. Welcome. And stage manager number 3, who's worked on shows such as The Lion King and Fences, as well as the drama chair of stage management at the Yale School of Drama, Narda E. Alcorn. Hello, welcome. Hi, friends. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, friends. How are you?
Great. Where are you all calling in from?
I'm upstate New York in Orange County, over near the Woodbury Commons.
Fantastic. And Alex?
I am home on the Upper West Side by Lincoln Center.
And Narda?
And I'm also home. I am downtown on 23rd and 1st in New York City.
All right. Well, I hope everyone and their loved ones are safe and staying happy and safe during this time. I wanted to start by saying, for me, stage managers are the most important person in production. There are many people who are not in the business who don't fully understand what stage managers do. And for those people out there, can you in a few sentences each talk about what a stage manager does besides everything? Narda, why don't you go first?
Everything, and I love to say that stage managers, we are the conductors, we are the orchestrators, we are the folks who pull it all together. We are there from the very beginning, from pre-production all the way until the very last performance. We are there to create community. We are there to ensure that the story gets told. We are there to maintain the intent of the artistry. And we're also there to schedule, and we're also there to make sure that everything is there that's needed. And we're also there to make sure that the environment is as safe as possible. So it's a huge undertaking, and it's also quite wonderful because it really prioritizes ensuring that the people who are every night, 8 shows a week, telling the story, have everything that they need at exactly the time that they need it.
Wow. Alex, anything to add? Beverly, anything to add?
I'll let Beverly go first.
We're caretakers, we're parents.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say we're cruise directors because somebody's got to make sure that we're at least trying to have a good time. We are we give out hall passes to people. We're teachers. If you can think of something that needs to be done in theater and it doesn't have a clear road to whose job it is, it falls back to us. Alex?
Yeah, what they said. I think also a lot of our job is to be the ones that are actually paying attention. especially once you get into shows like the ones that I know the three of us have all done long-running shows. And so our job is to really be the one who has to pay attention so that once everyone gets very comfortable, we can remind people and be like, don't forget about that cue, while you're checking Facebook or whatever. So,
yeah, love all of that. I'm curious for each of you, what made you decide to pursue a stage management career?
I'll go first. So I started as an actor. I think many stage managers begin as actors. I was actually in high school when I had a wonderful teacher who handed me the Burt Groover Stage Management Handbook and said, "Narda, I think you're a stage manager." He was right. And I was someone who I always wanted to be the best, and I knew that I was not the best actor. That was very clear. I went to the LA County High School for the Arts, so I was surrounded by talent. And I really found a calling in terms of really supporting and providing for, there's an artistry in providing and supporting everything that's needed in order for the creatives to truly, tell stories. And I found that I was really quite gifted at that. So that's how I got into it.
Wonderful. Beverly?
I got into it in college, freshman year, because I was not a trained dancer. So because I was not a trained dancer, I was not cast in The Wiz, but my freshman advisor told them to make me a stage manager, let me stage manage. And I sat in on my first production meeting. I tell this story all the time because it's true. I sat in on my first production meeting, and that's where I found my theater. And I'm like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to feel like. This, when I'm acting, this is what I want to do. I want to make all these people in this room have, I want to help them get their vision on that stage. And so that was the moment that changed me.
And what show was that?
That was The Wiz, honey.
Love it. I love it.
That was The Wiz, yes.
Well, that will inspire anyone.
Yes.
How about you?
I had grown up in New York, actually. My parents took me to theater all the time when I was a kid. And I remember the first musical that I remember seeing was The Wiz. And I just that was my jam. So I wanted to be in The Wiz so bad, but it wasn't going to happen. So, but I had a non-traditional path. I was actually trained as an architect. So I went to school for architecture. It never occurred to me to go into theater at all. That was never part of the plan until I got to my senior thesis in architecture school. And my advisor actually had a very difficult conversation with me where she said, you are not good enough at this, meaning architecture. She said, this is the most brutal field you can possibly pick to do if you're not passionate about it. And she said, every time I talk to you about your thesis, your eyes go dead. And she's like, she was also an actor in community theater. And so we would always talk about shows. And she said, whenever we talk about shows, your eyes light up and you get really excited. And I happened to be designing a theater for my thesis. And she said, we talk about what's happening inside the building of your thesis and you get excited. We talk about the building that your thesis is and you are miserable. So she said, I don't think that you should pursue this. And once I got past sort of the horror of having spent many hundreds of thousands of dollars of my parents' money on a degree I wasn't going to use, I decided to pivot, and it was the right choice.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not wasting.
So funny that architecture
to get there.
Sorry, repeat what you said, Beverly?
I was saying it wasn't wasted money because that was your path to get there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I will also say that my thesis was actually turning what is now the Friedman. What's the MTC theater called? Their Broadway house?
Friedman, sure. Samuel Friedman.
So my thesis was actually turning the Friedman into a center for avant-garde theater. So I like to say that I actually was ahead of the curve on that one.
Absolutely. Beverly, so you were working on Hadestown just before Broadway shut down.
Yep.
There's a picture of Hadestown. So it was a crazy time. What was the energy like behind the scenes, and how did you
Oh my gosh! Let me tell you about the heartache of that day.
Yeah.
So we were in the middle of at Open Jar. I had 2 rooms going for vacation swing. Someone was getting ready to leave, so we had that going on. In the actual building, we were doing what I call my put in, where you have the tech stuff and everybody can see it all in the light, and so we were doing that. That day, Eva and Reed had just started their first day of vacation. Now, Reed, God bless him, had never been out, and I mean ever. So he had never been out. So his understudy was like, yes. So when they pulled the plug at 3:37 in the afternoon, the heartbreak of everybody was like, oh, come on, can't we do it tomorrow? So it was heartbreaking. But we all gathered our little things, and we all gathered around each other and hugged and kissed and said, see you in 4 weeks, maybe 7. And we went over to Glass House and had a couple of drinks, and here we are sitting today. So,
well, I'm sure there's many stories like that just in all the shows, and hopefully we can hang tight and Hadestown will be back.
Yes, we'll be back. Yeah.
So Alex, theater is live, and things go wrong all the time. For you, is it nerve-wracking or exciting when that happens? And do you have any good, crazy things go wrong stories and shows you worked on?
I mean, there's only, if I had 6 or 7 hours, I could maybe go through some of it. Yeah. But I pivoted from theater to live events a few years ago, and then went back to theater as a sub over at Wicked, where I've been there for about 5 years. So I haven't done my own show in about more like 7 years. But you never forget. Well, I need to remind you, Beverly, that was almost 11 years ago. So
I hate you.
So one of the last shows I did on my own, was with Beverly, which was the highlight of my career. But yeah, I will say that you never forget. There are certain things that stage managers, especially ones that do big musicals, you never forget certain milestones. You never forget having to stop the show. Your first time you had to stop a show. You never forget the first time you hit an actor with a piece of scenery. Jennifer Hughes. Wherever she is, I'm still really sorry that I ran over you with the train. I literally ran over her with the train. And but I think my crowning achievement was when I was on tour with Lion King. I am one of the few stage managers that's actually been in the show. I had to actually be in Lion King, which isn't really casting appropriate. And I also they have a costume backstage. I had to run the banner, which I know Beverly and Narda knows what that means. I was in the finale. I was in Confrontation, and I had to run the banner because we had a split track show, which means that we had 150 people out. I think we actually had 15 people out of the show, and so we had a swing who was playing 4 different tracks, and he got. I can't imagine how he could have gotten confused, but he was on the wrong side of the stage and forgot he was supposed to. He thought he was supposed to be doing a shadow puppet thing, but he was supposed to be running the banner. So we actually have a costume for this eventuality, and of course, on our tour, the costume had already leapt to the next city because it was in a different road case.
Oh no!
I had to run the banner in full blacks with a headset. I had 2 walkie-talkies clipped to my belt, one because the stage managers on that tour always have walkie-talkies for house management and physical therapy. So I'm running the banner, and there was no time to tell the cast. There was also, so the cast was like discovering me as I was running this banner, and various people were like, what the f- is going on? I had this one girl, Trista, who was screaming, yes, like that, so it was,
I love that we all have Lion King in common.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Narda, I know you talk a lot about stage management as an artistic collaboration, and you've had multiple artistic collaborations with the late, great playwright August Wilson. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and how that collaboration came about?
Sure. I was really, it feels very charmed now when I tell this story, but I was 18 years old looking at colleges. My mother was able to take me to New York City. It was my first trip to New York. I was looking at NYU, I was looking at Boston, etc. And I saw my first Broadway play was Fences with James Earl Jones. And it was unbelievable. And I had not been introduced to August Wilson until that time, which is a tragedy of my high school education. But I didn't know who he was. And I was like, oh my goodness, who is this man? And it was truly the story of, this is a person who writes plays about people who look like me. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I went to a predominantly white school. I was always the only one. It was really incredibly impactful going to see Fences and realizing that this is a person who writes plays, and actually he's still alive. And he's sort of connected to the Yale School of Drama. So maybe if I go to Yale, I can meet him. That's literally that was my path. And so I went to college, and then I went to grad school at Yale. And indeed, excuse me, my second year at the Yale School of Drama, I was introduced to August Wilson.
Wow.
And I was just so, I begged and did everything I could to be the intern on the Chicago production of Seven Guitars with Viola Davis and Ruben Santiago Hudson, directed by Lloyd Richards. And they had never let a stage manager out of the Yale School of Drama for an internship during school time. It was a whole big thing. But I wrote letters and I championed, and they said yes. And I did it, and I slept on somebody's floor. No joke. There were lots of bugs because I didn't have any money. But I was the intern. And then from that, because I was the intern on Seven Guitars, fast forward about a year when it was ready to go to the regionals before doing its Broadway run, I was given the contract of the assistant stage manager.
Wow.
And so from 1995 until 2005, I had the most amazing, sort of beautiful, my theater upbringing was with August during those 10 years. And if anybody ever reads his final play, August's final play, Radio Golf, he wrote me into that play.
Wow.
So I'm incredibly just so privileged, and he is a huge part of my life. Like my kids know about August as much as they know about their own grandparents, who have passed away. So it's very much a huge part of my life.
Beautiful story. And maybe there's a book there or something from your perspective. It sounds like there's so many more things in there to explore. That's thrilling. Thank you for sharing that. Beverly, you have worked on several shows that deal with sort of heavy and important subjects, such as Amazing Grace. There's Amazing Grace, which actually starred Leona Michelle, who is one of our Live Color alums from Little Girl Blue. This short show explored how British slave trade inspired the titular hymn. How does the subject matter of a show you're working on influence your job?
It influences my job in that, not that I accept it, but that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But once I'm in the room and you look at what the director is doing, let's talk about Amazing Grace, because that's a great one to pick for this. Amazing Grace, the first time you see more than one person of color. It starts off with a young woman, and then we go to, colonial times, and everybody's at the shore, and, they're getting the cargo in, and life is great. And, oh, here's my new girlfriend. And then they bring the cargo on. And the cargo is a big metal crate that's covered in a cloth. And when you rip it off, it's full of Africans, stuffed and chained. And then they are literally taken out and thrown to the deck of the stage. And my favorite thing about this show was actually having to write the accident reports. Is that how did so-and-so get hurt?
Yeah.
Well, when she was being thrown out of the slave crate, her chains, just something like that. But when you have a show like that where the first scene erupts and I hope I'm not spoiling this for anybody, and an African male is shot in the back for trying to protect his family. Sound familiar, anybody? You have to make sure that when they come off of that stage, that you do everything that those feelings don't roll over into the dressing room, into the hallway. And so that's where cruise directing is important. Yeah. That's where open communication with the director and the choreographer and the fight director. My God, that's important. And so as a stage manager, sometimes you have to talk to the creative staff to make sure that they're being sensitive to those people, to everyone's needs. And I have to say that it turned out great. It turned out great. It may not always, but in this instance, it did. But that's a big part of our job is having that spidey sense. No, okay, we need to take a break right here. Let people go off to their corners and come back, check in with people, make sure they're feeling okay. If there's something that's not right, let's discuss it now. Let's not let things fester.
Yeah. Such a, as I was talking about, like, I think not every person is suited for a certain job. So I think it's like dating. You have to have like the perfect person that understands the piece, understands the creative team and everything. So, Alex, you have stage managed, is it true, 22 Broadway shows, including a long-running. And as you said, recently you've been in the corporate world, in the event stage manager. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between those gigs?
Well, the biggest difference between corporate and Broadway, aside from the money factor, which is significant, is that there's two big differences that I'm constantly dealing with. One is that you do it for corporate, you do the show once, and then it's done. You have to do it correctly the first time. You have to do it without having rehearsed the show in order, because I think I probably have done 500 corporate events in my career, and I have yet to do a single one where we rehearsed in order. And I have also done many where the order changes after the show has started. So that is a very common thing that happens. So there's that. The other thing is that you're dealing with people, your talent, instead of being Broadway performers who might have experience with being on stage and how to find their mark and how to talk into a microphone or how to be on stage. You're dealing with corporate executives that almost never know how to do that. Sometimes you do, and sometimes you're lucky. You have speaker coaches or whatever, or you have people that are they're like CEOs are usually familiar with being on stage or on camera. But I also do a lot of political events. So I have actually worked for both sides of the coin. I've worked for the Clintons, but I've also worked for Anthony Scaramucci. And I actually took time off from a show with Beverly to do the Scaramucci thing, which was probably not a good idea. Anyway, so so the biggest difference really is the speed at which things happen, and the fact that you're working with people who don't necessarily know what they're doing, or more importantly, they don't understand that what they're doing is a show. So like they don't understand that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you have to make, even if you're doing something as boring as a sales conference, you have to have, so our job is to really, we have to layer that on whether they like it or not. So we're the ones that have to explain, like, this is how you have to, roll from your video into your speech, or roll from your video into your slide deck, or how do you cover a transition if you have to move furniture on stage? All these things which the client end does not understand. So we have to make them understand it in a way that is respectful. So that's the biggest difference.
A lot more hand holding, I take it.
Oh my God, yes. Yes.
Narda, you recently wrote an article for HowlRound with fellow stage manager Lisa Porter about anti-racist stage management education. In the article, you mentioned that when comparing careers, you discovered that while you were put in situations where you became the diversity expert by default, Lisa, as a white stage manager, was not. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think we're in a time. It's a really exciting time, honestly, because it feels very hopeful for me that things perhaps will change. That theater, white American theater, I think is undergoing a reckoning. As a Black stage manager, I could fill a book with the amount of microaggressions, with the amount of tokenization, with the amount of being considered, again, the diversity expert by default, with being the only one of the creative team in the room, with people feeling very proud of the fact that they've hired me, as if their progress is measured by the fact that I'm in the room. So all of that has been a part of my experience, and I think I'm really, again, I'm choosing to be hopeful at this time that white American theater, because the people who control the purse strings are white, that they will truly look within themselves, and then really look at our industry and think about what is truly equitable and how do we truly create an equitable process. And I think that has, as an educator, I feel incredibly responsible now to teach that. I've learned so much in the last, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, in terms of, my own internalized racism, my own view of the world, what I need to change, how I want to truly lead as an anti-racist in the world, as a stage manager, as an educator. So I think it's, Lisa and I, we feel strongly that as educators of stage management, which is this, it's this niche discipline that we know what it is, but nobody else in the world knows what this is. But we want to, we're constantly looking at the next generation. And imagine if the next generation of stage managers, where anti-racism was always a part of their process, where inclusion and equity and diversity inclusion was always a part of their process, where they questioned sort of the old guard at every step, and we're not penalized for it, but in fact we're encouraged to do that. And where the producers and the general managers of Broadway, I consider myself a Broadway stage manager. I love Broadway. The folks who control the purse strings are predominantly white, and that must change. And imagine if that wasn't so. So yes, I'm sure anyone who is not white as a stage manager has suffered many an injustice in our industry. And this is a time when people are listening, where we have an opportunity to say, look at this, look at yourself, let's actually now do better. And not just in this moment, but honestly for the rest of our lives. Like literally, this is not something that we're doing in the moment because it's sort of, flavor of the month, but this needs to be something that we truly integrate into our process, into our practice, into theater making, into American theater making, certainly.
So beautifully said. Our mission at Live and in Color is to try to connect diverse communities to create new stage works. For each of you, what does having a diverse working environment mean to you? Alex, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can. The only time I've actually ever worked with another stage manager of color was when I assisted Beverly on a show. And even when I was at Lion King on the tour, at least, I think I was the first stage manager of color who had ever been on the tour. I may not have that exactly right, but that's certainly within the previous 3 years. I was the first stage manager of color to walk into the theater. I grew up. The Asian stage managers, at least, there's like 5 of us. Like we all know each other. There used to be like 3 of us, and It was me, Valerie Laukilai, and John Nakagawa when I first started. And that's blissfully changed. There's now at least 5 of us. And I think there might be more in the regionals that I'm not aware of. But on Broadway, there's basically, we still show up. And we're all like, oh, yeah, Sherry. So, so I think, for me, I'm more happy when I see performers of color, of Asian descent. I rarely see them. And if you're one of the few that I've worked with, we all know who the Asian track is in all these shows, and we all know who, in Lion King, who the Anthill Lady was or whatever. Like, we all know which track and which show and who played it, and you can track it through. In some shows, it's easier to track who the Asian person was in the ensemble than it is to track who the principals were, because it sticks out. It sticks out so much. So, I don't know if that really answered your question.
No, absolutely. Beverly, for you?
What's the question?
Diverse working environment. What does that mean to you? How important is that?
Okay, it's very important. Look at me. It's very important. That goes without saying. But besides that, I'll answer 2 questions. One, I had the privilege of working at the Longacre Theater. And if you've never worked at the Longacre Theater, then you have not seen what real diversity looks like. That house crew, the house crew is Asian, it's Black, it's white, it's Hispanic, without thought. These are people who have house jobs. That is unfreaking heard of. And they're all not related, which is something that's a different story. It was amazing. And it was also very important for the show that I was doing there, which was A Bronx Tale, which was about separation, separate, not equal, which had fights, which had, the whole thing about racism in it. It was it was central to part of that story. But the community that was already set up there, you have no idea how important that is.
Yeah.
For the actors who are on that stage, when they look off stage, and it's not just their stage manager, but it's the guy who's pulling the ropes, the guy who's pushing the buttons. It's the person who's helping them get their new jacket on. It's the person who's giving them their cigarettes. It was just amazing. And I love working with those people. I love them. All right. So that said, diversity is very important. I now have Cherie.
And Narda?
I would say, gosh, what does that environment look like? I think it looks like everything that we've imagined and everything that we haven't even begun to imagine yet. Mm-hmm. I think that what I hope that comes out of this time is when you look at the producers and the general managers, who are the folks who are controlling the content and the purse strings, who are overwhelmingly white. Imagine if for every single one of those people, if having a diverse partner, a racially diverse partner, was of the utmost importance. Mm-hmm. So whether that means creating a new position or whether that means stepping away and allowing for a new person to come in, whatever that means, imagine if that were the value. Like if you really actually said, how can I continue to create theater when the 3 of us who make all the decisions are white? So I think that what I'm hoping that comes out of this time is that value and that fire and that realization really sort of infuses into the producerial level of the Broadway theater specifically, that says that we can no longer, it is unacceptable for me to be in an office where everybody who's the decision maker is white. That is unacceptable. And I, as a white person, that is my value. Until it's the white person's value, I don't believe that we will have the sea change that we need.
So true.
So that's what I think a true, because then, because yes, it's going to take time. And I am not somebody who says, fire all the white people. I don't believe, I believe that we're all here, and I believe in abundance. I don't believe in scarcity. I believe that there's enough for everyone. And I believe that it's about changing our values, where, you know what, our values are about all stories and diverse stories and and diverse people, and making that a value so that it, so that it really is representational of America, since we're supposed to be telling, this is America, this is Broadway. And
that's wonderful. I think we have a couple questions from our viewers. Let's see. Emma Oleg says, did you have any mentors in the business? Any of you want to go jump in there?
I definitely had one. Frank Hardstein. I had two. Well, I sort of had two. The big one for me was Frank Hardstein, who was the stage manager who taught me how to call musicals. He taught me how to write a call book for a mega musical. I also was mentored by Michael Ritchie, who is now the head of Center Theater Group in LA, and he was one of the first stage managers I interned for. And Michael and I are still very close. And Frank, I haven't seen Frank in a while, but Frank and I were very close for a very long time.
Beverly or Narda?
Yes, I have my stage management parents, I like to call them. Mary Beth Abel, who is the PSM over at Wicked. She was my stage management mama. And Tom Capps, who was the PSM on Miss Saigon when I started there.
Yeah.
They really taught me a lot on how to treat people and how to be able to balance how do you treat people, but also keep it business. And they're just great people, and I love them both. Those are my two.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Narda? Besides the great August Wilson?
Besides the great August Wilson, August, certainly, Lloyd Richards, Kenny Leon, certainly. And I'll say specifically in terms of stage management, Karen Carpenter, who's now a director in New York City, she was my stage management teacher for my 3 years at the Yale School of Drama, incredibly influential. And I'll also say, Lisa Porter, who is my co-writer, we wrote a book together, Stage Management Theory. It's interesting to have a mentor who's also a peer, but I'm really lucky that at least once a week, we're often on a call together talking about stage management. I love this job, and I love teaching this job and really investigating this job. And I've learned so much about what does it mean to do this job in terms of remaining in alignment with your values. I would say that that's what I've really learned from Lisa.
That's wonderful. Let's take one more question very quickly because we're running out of time. So Robert Duran says, this is a great conversation. Love your stories. What does stage managing look like in our new virtual world? Oh, we were just talking about that before we started the show. And if you want to jump in quickly and talk a little bit about that.
Learn Zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
Learn everything you can about Zoom. What else is there? Google Meets and StreamYard. Learn all of that stuff.
We are now camera directors, so stage managers are now camera directors.
I'm sitting here playing with barn doors, playing with lights, like, what can I, that's what you have to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. I will also say, too, I've heard from, Arabella Powell, who just did the Public's, the radio show, the Richard piece with directed by Saheem Ali. Yes, absolutely. We are camera directors, and we are learning the technology is key. All of that. It's much more technical, I think, than many of us perhaps want. And one thing I learned from Arabella is it's so important to stay connected to your people. In other words, and you have to make an extra effort, because you're not sort of in there, but you have, whether it's meeting them in the waiting room to say, hey, how you doing, or texting them, but keeping that, the interpersonal piece was so important. And I think that that's something that we can all really remember as we go through this.
Yeah, I was on a call for a corporate event, sort of meeting of the minds of how earlier on, it was in late May, there are 182 software platforms that are currently being used in various combinations to make theater and live events happen. And there is no like swipe your credit card and you get this and this will work. So at the moment, it's a total wild west of Frankensteining together technologies of like WhatsApp and chats and Google Hangouts and Zoom and all these things which normally we're so used to doing in person. We now have to figure out how to do it all virtually. So at the moment, it is an absolute mess of a million different technologies, all of which work, but they're not really designed to work in the combinations that stage managers are being asked to use them together in. So I think it'll sort of like work itself out over the next few months, but right now it is, to put it bluntly, a mess.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing the progress just in these few months it's made. So hopefully moving ahead, it will continue to move in that direction. We are out of time. I could talk to the three of you all night. I just want to take a second to say that the work we do at Live and in Color focuses on fostering an inclusive environments and create platforms that showcase underrepresented voices. I really believe the stories we tell can change hearts and minds. If you can, please consider donating at theaterincolor.org. Any donations go to supporting our work and our artists who are in desperately needed work right now. Also, be sure to tune in to be our guest next week when I will be talking to the star of the King and I revival, the 25th annual and Rent, the amazing Jose Lana. And finally, thank you to everyone who tuned in today. And thank you, Beverly and Narda and Alex, for joining me. Will one of you send us out with a little toast as we go? Does someone want to say something?
I want to toast to you, Dev, for starting this wonderful theater company and for giving people like us a voice and a job. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're here.
Yes.
And more adventures ahead. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you next week.
Here.
Cheers.
Bye.
The mornings run together. Seems like one long day. You're going through the motions. What does it matter? Does it matter anyway? Wishing things were different. When the world is cold and gray, it's the same old song that's playing, with the same old things to say. Someone should mix things up, someone should take a chance, someone should sing a new number, someone should dance a new dance, and change the story. Come on and change the scene. Choose the beginning, the ending in between. It's time to change the story. It's time to change the tune. See how the future looks bright. Change on the horizon. Coming soon. And suddenly you're not lonely. Burned out from 9 to 5. Suddenly you have purpose. You feel alive. Here everyone is welcome. Come in love and dignity. 'Cause when we come together, that's when we're truly free. Come on and mix things up. Come on and take a chance. Come on and sing a new number.